It happened. And there really only is one thing to say about the people who are right now at this moment complaining about it and bemoaning the democratic decision made by the people of the United States. You, yes, you could have prevented this. You chose not to. Now grow up, grow a spine, and take some fucking responsibility. I'm not exactly thrilled myself over having a Trump presidency in the United States for the next 4 or even 8 years. Heck, his vice president is even more of a disaster. A guy whose home state almost is a theocracy and whose incoherent gibberish over creationism and gay people would drive anyone with more than 2 brain cells up a fucking wall. But for me personally, after watching the pathetic decline of the political left of centre and of the liberal movements in general throughout the West, from Europe to the United States, this is what is needed and this is what you deserve. To use an analogy from European history, when Napoleon's Grand Army invaded Russia and won the Battle of Borodino, Russia's defender Marshal Kutuzov decided to burn the city of Moscow to the ground, forcing the French army to retreat through the icy lands of Russia and freezing to death. America's liberals burned Moscow to save Russia. And what else did you expect them to do? This was an election which you decided to fight over non-issues and matters of utter and complete irrelevance. People's manners and naughty words were chosen as campaign issues and topics in favor over addressing actual fucking issues such as the massive unemployment and increased misery, decline and poverty throughout the country. I come out of a completely different political culture and history. America's left evolved out of stuck-up intellectuals sipping tea over ideas in comfortable living rooms, whilst from France to Germany to Italy to elsewhere on this continent, our liberal and left-wing tradition is one of violent struggles against the forces of authoritarianism, of confronting those who would hold you back. And I see myself in that tradition, a tradition of working with people and of helping people, the tradition of the first European republicans who fought for equality before the law as equal citizens for all, who fought for the emancipation of the Jews, the early socialists of the cities of the French Republic and Prussian Kingdom, who went into the impoverished factory city districts from Marseille to Paris to Lille to Berlin to Danzig and Königsberg to teach impoverished families how to read and write, who organized workers' unions and managed to push the most conservative leader a European nation ever had into enacting a Social Healthcare Act in the 1870s. The tradition of Willy Brandt and Helmut Schmidt, who campaigned for a society alleviated from poverty at the same time rejecting the horrid face of authoritarian left-wing violence. Throughout Europe's political history, the liberal and left-leaning political movements, from its beginnings in the 1850s right up to the 1980s, have been movements that distinguished themselves as being there to talk to people, no matter what squalor they may be in, rather than talking down to people and lecturing them over what they are supposed to be and what they are supposed to want. Compassion and an ear for people's needs was what stood at the center of its work within society, as well as ending the authoritarianism and reactionary despotism that had ruled Europe over the course of several hundred years in favor of advancing the rights of men as individual equal citizens within a free society. And then we got this, the Clintons and the Blairs, who decided that what was needed was not a left who cared about people's needs, or liberals who cared about people's rights and liberties, but a left and liberals who would gut the welfare state, cut down social security, disregard the needs of those who are at the bottom of the social food chain, pass legislature on the behest of banks, lie their countries into wars, and who would frankly do just anything to get elected. This monster created during the late 1980s and early 1990s seems to have been created for no other reason than to finally get back into office again after both in the United States and the UK the political field had been dominated by conservatives for over 12 years. It's almost as if opportunism became an ideology and created its own political parties, as if standing by what is easy and convenient would alleviate one of the burdens of political conviction, which would usually mean decades of long hard work dedicated to convincing people of one's ideas. Take Clinton, who used to be against gay marriage and then was for it when it became popular, who flip-flopped her political views with whatever was convenient and for whatever made it more likely for her to win an election. It amazes me and perplexes me how nobody throughout the Democratic primaries, neither from her party or the various political pundits or from the American news media, ever found the courage to stand up and ask her, well, what in actual fact are you for? The fact that she was chosen to run for president at all is amazing. We live in an era where nothing is despised as much as the establishment politics of capital cities, with its backdoor negotiations with lobbying groups and arrogant ivory tower attitude towards the common folk. And in such a time, after an 8-year presidency by a man who campaigned as an outside of the establishment candidate and had his decision-making bound by the establishment, the Democratic Party stood there and decided that the best thing to do was to offer the people of the United States that very establishment. Did you really believe that the voters would not see through the farce that is a candidate that changes her position with what is popular and convenient? There's a simple fact about having a flip-flopping U-turn attitude like that. If you are for everything, in the end you will end up being for nothing. And who wants to be led by someone, ruled by someone, and commanded by someone who is for nothing? The scandals riddling through the Democratic primary process through leaked emails showed us that the American Party, which proclaims to be the representative and the guardian of the average blue-collar worker, is in fact nothing more but an interest group meetup that disregards the democratic process in favor of appointments through favors negotiated in secret backdoor room deals. And then there is Bernie Sanders, a curious spark of hope for people like me, the kind of person who I believe could have contributed to ending the curse of opportunism, nepotism, and the elitism that has plagued liberal and left-leaning movements throughout the Western world, by disregarding the fake issues and making his main campaign issue an actual fucking issue, the issue of the declining middle class. And as he campaigns, he finds himself not only cheated out of the race, but forced into a corner to proclaim that apparently you are unable to know what poverty is if you are not black. We all know where this attitude comes from. The progressive stack, the oppression Olympics, the moronic tenets of Frankfurt School cultural Marxism. And we all know the clergy of that church, of caviar socialism, our new dear benevolent kings of the oppressed, who although seem to do rather well for themselves, who never worked for a day of their lives and are essentially paid to be nothing more but judgmental assholes, who talk down upon you and presume to have the authority to lecture you based on nothing more but ideas they dreamt up in their heads over what it supposedly means to be oppressed. I find this aspect particularly disgusting. It sores me to the core as someone who experienced the bottom of the social food chain. After getting kicked out by my parents at the age of 19, I had to work shifts with the cleaning staff in a hospital. I remember working mainly together with various immigrants from Romania, Russia, Moldova, Ghana, Nigeria, and the Balkans. And the one thing I learned from this experience, and the one thing that desperately needs to be taught to the Laurie Pennies and the Jessica Valentis of this world, is that hunger, misery, poverty, a small broken down apartment, the sting of chlorine cleaner in your eyes and nose, the smell of feces drained bedsheets, the feeling of disorientation after not sleeping properly for a week, a 70-hour work week, the continuous feeling of worthlessness when having to live off a miserable job. All these things, they don't give a fuck about the color of your skin or about what you may or may not have between your legs. I never had a conversation about race with any of my co-workers back then. In fact, our backgrounds didn't really matter that much, since we found ourselves together in the same situation. If you clean shit for a living, you can't afford wasting your time or the time of your co-workers by dreaming up and preaching obnoxious concepts over who is oppressed the most and what proper pronouns should be used to address each other. One of my co-workers went to bed hungry once or twice a week so she could feed her 2 children. Do you think what proper pronoun she should be addressed with in accordance to some redefinition of language for the purpose of resolving the supposed oppression Olympics mattered to her? And it is these people who the American liberal left has now completely lost with the nomination of Clinton and the election victory of Trump. The average worker, from the ditch digger to the blue-collar worker, they and their concerns used to stand at the center of the political struggles of the liberal left. Yet today you find rich kids with manicured nails lecturing these people about the evils of the evil white man who couldn't afford college but should, despite his 60 work-hour week, be beholden to pay an eternal debt to build an utopian society built upon the basis of nothing but the color of their skin. Did you really believe that someone who couldn't afford a college education but works bending metal plates 50 to 60 hours a week so he can afford sending his children to college would vote for you after you told him that his healthcare, the healthcare of his family and his children, his work safety, his pension plan, the living conditions of his family, and all his other concerns are just secondary issues that have to take a back seat behind the concerns of the son of a millionaire who claims that someone said a naughty word to him? When I worked as a cleaning staff in the hospital, the thing that struck me the most was that despite having an abhorrent job that nobody wishes to do, the nurses and even the doctors treated us with the same common decency and respect that one would share with anyone else. Our social standing didn't matter, and we all had jobs to do. And this basic human respect, this notion that we all share and are entitled to some basic treatment of common human decency, you have lost that. Completely and utterly. And right now, in this very moment, the party of the average blue-collar worker, the party of the people in need, the party of the ditch digger, that is not you, but the Republican Party. And they didn't get into that position through their policies, but through your behavior and your failures, and through the simple fact that you insulted and disgruntled that base into leaving you. You treated the people you depended upon like shit. And now you are the party of the gender studies degree, the party of the obnoxiously arrogant and vain. And you are running out of time. 2017 will be a year of major elections in big and important European nations. All of them could very well end up thrusting right-wing and far-right parties into governance, not because of their policies, but because of your failures and because your contempt for the working people. You also only have 2 years to regain Congress, and after that 2 years to gain back the working base to get Trump out. Or else we could see the entire Western world dominated by right-wing politics for the next decade. This is where we stand. Either we end the obnoxious takeover of our political field by social justice warriors and their social justice clergy, or we will be cast out into the political wilderness and irrelevance for the next decade, being forced to watch many of the things we managed to build and create being undone. Kick out those bunkered in their back rooms making deals with lobbyists, and kick out those who protect them by proclaiming to do it for social justice, and end your obnoxious ivory tower attitude towards the average working people. Or you will keep losing. You will be cast in the wilderness. You can prevent this, and I hope you choose to do so.